Welcome back to This American Goat. I'm your host, Myra Grass, here with a bonus story about a doll who loves to make speeches before leaping into mortal peril. The doll is missing the top half of her head, but I think you'll find that's part of her charm. This American Goat is the home for stories from Hildy Festerling, the creator of the Goat American novel. Stories which aren't exactly part of the Goat American novel, but which can't be squashed into another container because they're too weird. Today's episode, The Life and Times of Marie Vinson, is about a doll who is on all the other dolls' nerves. She is also the world's greatest daredevil. In fact, you might recognize Marie from the condiment aisle of your grocery store because Marie is the founder of and official spokesdoll for Daredevil brand barbecue sauce. Daredevil brand barbecue sauce is also the sponsor of this episode of This American Goat. Their original smoky recipe is aged in cannons, not vats, and that is why it is unsafe for consumption by both humans and goats because it contains gunpowder. The Federal Doll Administration is currently researching the safety of Daredevil brand barbecue sauce for use in doll foods. Please ask your local toy store if Daredevil brand barbecue sauce is right for your doll. We're sharing the story of Marie Vinson because our other bonus episode was judged too boring for children by our children's library consultant who, in fact, is a child. Fans of the podcast may find a few of the characters from this story as familiar. Perhaps you might imagine that this story was recorded for Usnap by Layla on her block of wood. Please enjoy.
Marie was born on an assembly line with a million other dolls, exactly like her. She was born to be wrapped in a little plastic sack and stuffed in a meal bag to make children happy. Like the million others, Marie was a little plastic sleepy doll, her eyes shut when you lay her down and opened when you stood her up. She could not move her arms or knees, but her hips and arm sockets were fully articulated, and her neck turned all the way around. Like the millions of other such dolls, she was made to look like a character from a movie that was being seen by children all that year. A movie that featured a lot of spotted black and white dogs being chased around by a villainous woman, while the dogs' owners watched on. Most of the dolls made for the meal bags that year were the spotted black and white dogs and the useless owners. But Marie and the other dolls made that week, stretching out in an assembly line long in front of her and in back of her, were made to resemble the villainous woman. She and all the other villains had a shock of hair, half black, half white, and a red trench coat sewn on with little stitches at the wrist, and a red plastic hat. Her legs had red plastic tights and her body had a black plastic onesie. Her mouth was pursed in the manner of someone who has just smelled bad sushi, and her painted-on eyebrows could kill a man at 10 paces. When the assembly line workers clicked her eyes into place, Marie gasped alive in the silent way of dolls, and she saw at once the others stretching out in front of her and in back of her, and she thought her first thought, which was, "Are we all exactly the same?" Marie was wrapped in the plastic and stuffed in the Happy Meal sack, but the child who opened her was not happy about it. The child was named Stacy, and all the other girls at the birthday party had gotten the spotted black and white dogs in their Happy Meal sacks. The birthday party had watched the movie about the dogs, had spent the last hours in the theater watching the villainous villain chase those dogs around. "Cruella de Vil? No fair!" Stacy yelled. "Ha ha! Stacy got Cruella de Vil! Stacy got Cruella! Stacy got Cruella!" Stacy would have liked to sweep Marie, also known as Cruella, into the garbage bag with the hamburger wrappers, but Stacy's mother, not wanting the other mothers to think Stacy was spoiled and ungrateful, stuffed the doll into her purse while Stacy said her last happy birthday. At home, Stacy's mom tossed Marie into Stacy's 3-story pink plastic dollhouse. At Stacy's house that night, when all the dolls came alive, the tall, blonde dolls clicked on the dollhouse light and looked down at Marie, who barely came up to their knees. "She's Cruella de Vil." said the boss doll knowingly. Cruella de Vil is the bad guy. I saw the movie with Stacy. Marie looked up at the tall blonde dolls, who were mostly exactly the same as one another, although they wore different outfits. Cruella de Vil, the blonde dolls repeated to each other, nodding their smiling faces. Cruella de Vil. What do you know about it? Marie answered and turned her permanent I smell sour milk face away from them. Stacy didn't touch Marie for 3 weeks. Then, one day, when Stacy came home from school, mad, she ripped the trench coat off Marie, leaving her in tights and onesies, which was as naked as Marie could get. Almost. Stacy cut all of Marie's hair down to the quick, but Stacy couldn't reach the hair under the hat. So she took a hammer and pounded the hat off, or she tried to. It didn't come off with the hammering, so she got the pliers and finally, powered by her anger about how the other girls had been mean to her since the birthday party, Stacy managed to wrench Marie's hat off. And at this came the first surprise for both Stacy and Marie, which was that under the hat was no head, but instead bare skull. An empty bowl with a broken-off bolt in it, where brains should be. Only half a skull and no brains. Still, I think, Marie mused to herself. And so, with nothing in my head, I persist. And she wondered about all the other dolls who were exactly like her, who had been born on the long line of identical dolls, and she wondered if they still had their hair or their trench coats and the top halves of their heads. We may have once been the same, but no longer. That night when the tall blonde dolls at Stacy's house performed their nightly ritual of turning the light in the dollhouse off and on, and pretending to drink tea from the tiny china cups on the plastic table, Marie walked stiffly up to them with her unbending knees and said, "All you dolls are much older than me. Tell me, were you all made exactly the same as others? Is it possible for any two things in this world to be exactly the same? Or is there always something there, something which persists?" The boss doll dragged her sparkling eyes over Marie and said, "Cruella de Vil. Cruella means cruel." At this, the boss doll paused, and all the other dolls began bending their soft rubbery knees and elbow joints. "Cruel, which is being mean," the boss doll went on. "You're a mean doll, and de Vil means devil." The boss doll spat the word out and looked away, lifting her rubbery elbows to drink more pretend tea. It took many nights for Marie to find her way to a dictionary without being seen. When the sun rose each morning, Marie had to roll herself under whatever piece of furniture was closest at hand. Finally, she found the dictionary and used her stiff plastic arms to open it to the D section. "Devil," she read, by the light of the dollhouse switching off and on in the distant darkness. "An immortal being, evil personified with the horns and legs of a goat and the torso and head of a man." Marie turned her head all the way backwards on her neck and tried to imagine this to herself. She read on. Devilry, deviled eggs, deviled ham, daredevil. Marie experienced a shudder of recognition at this word. She repeated it to herself. Daredevil, daredevil. She read on. Daredevil, a person who takes risks professionally. She shut the dictionary. A person who takes risks professionally. She reached her hard hand up and felt the bowl of her skull. What risks do I have left to take? And what does professionally mean? The next night, though she hated to do it, Marie approached the other dolls, who sipped all night at the empty cups under the clicking light. "Do you have professions?" she asked the dolls. The dolls stared back at her. "Professions! Do any of you take risks? Professionally? Or do you do anything else? Professionally?" The tall blonde dolls still didn't speak. "Hello! I am speaking to you. Can you hear me? Here I am, headless and plastic, survivor of the pliers and the scissors. I am talking to you. Do you have any thoughts in your skulls? Can you hear me, you witless Scandinavian giants? Do you have professions? I say, do you do anything professionally? The boss doll's second in command spoke up first. Well, of course we have professions. I'm a veterinarian. Claire is a ski instructor. Amy is an Olympic gymnast. Vanessa is a fashion model. What do you think we do, sit around all day? And all the dolls began flexing their rubber elbows and knees at Marie. The something in Marie that had survived flared white-hot anger in her chest, and she ran suddenly up the stairs of the dollhouse on her stiff legs, through the window and out onto the roof. What is she doing? All the dolls whispered. What is she doing? What is she doing? What is she doing? I am taking risks, professionally, Marie screamed, and she leapt from the dollhouse roof. It took less than a second for her to reach the ground, but that moment was an eternity of flight. And when she landed hard on the tile floor of Stacy's playroom, her plastic limbs rattled with resilience. I am unbroken, Marie whispered to herself, face down on the floor. Unbroken, and the something inside me that survived the pliers is as hard as a diamond. At that moment, the lights went up, and Stacy's mother came in with a broom and swept Marie and several other unused toys up, and threw them into a bin with a snap-on lid, shoved them into a closet, where she languished for 7 years. How does a doll measure that time? Marie was trapped there, but dolls have great powers of hibernation, as many of them never die, and many of them spend years lost in attics, sealed under floorboards, in forgotten toy bins. As the 7 years turned, Marie mostly dreamed of the moment that Stacy had wrenched off her skull. There was no light in the closet, no one to yell at, no risks to take. In the bin with her were only a few of the spotted dog toys, and these were afraid of her. They had seen the movie. Stacy started high school, and her mother held a garage sale. Marie was hauled suddenly out into the light, stuffed in yet another plastic sack with a bunch of other toys with no sentimental value to Stacy or her mother, and slapped with a sticker, 25 cents, placed on top of a fold-up table on the lawn in the glaring light of a May morning. It was there that a very little boy found her. A little boy with a diamond glitter in his own eyes. The little boy was named Felix, and Felix was a 5-year-old whose abilities with a cordless drill were far greater than his ability to say the letter R. He was fresh that morning off the success of taking a set of 4 wheels off a rolling office chair he had found in the alley and screwing those wheels onto a 2x4, which is a plank of wood. Felix picked up the bag of abandoned toys, and he immediately ripped it open because he hadn't been trained not to do that sort of thing yet. He took Marie out and looked at her bare, open skull, her red plastic tights and enviable onesie. He immediately wanted a onesie and tights just like these. Marie was light but very hard, very durable in his small hand, and her sleepy eyes glittered up at him. He spent some long moments considering her open skull and the snapped-off bolt. He couldn't understand if she had come from the store that way. What he felt sure of was that this doll had seen a lot of life already. Marie, being a doll, had no choice but to lay in his strong little hand and stare back. It had been a long time since she'd been touched by a child. The boy's dad was getting back on his bike to leave the garage sale. Come on, Felix. Hey, Dad. Hey, this is a good doll. We don't need any more dolls, the dad said. This is a really good doll, Felix insisted. Felix's big sister swaggered over. She considered herself an authority on dolls, and if her little brother was saying something about a doll, she wouldn't be dragged away from the garage sale without verifying it. We don't need any more dolls, the dad repeated. But the big sister was looking Marie over, and Marie looked back, her sleepy eyes unflinching, her bare half-skull with nothing to lose and a slight look of villainy stamped into the plastic around her eyes and mouth. Neither Felix nor the sister had been born 9 years ago when the movie about the spotted dogs had come out. Neither of them recognized her. This is a good doll, actually, the sister said. Dad! Ursula says it's a good doll! Ursula says it's a good doll! We don't need any more dolls, the dad said as he pulled out his wallet. Your mom specifically said not to come home with any more dolls. Dad, I think Felix really wants this doll, Ursula said. How much for the doll? The dad asked Stacy's mom. Stacy's mom's eyes narrowed on Marie, then looked back at the dad. Are you a collector or something? Stacy's mom asked the dad. Is this doll valuable? It came from this bag, Felix yelled, running over with Marie in one hand and the bag in the other. All the other toys in the bag had fallen out onto the lawn. It has a price tag. Read it, Ursula. 25 cents, Ursula said. Let me see that, Stacy's mom said, reaching for Marie, who was feeling the horrible helplessness of dolls in the daytime. The bag says 25 cents, the dad said, and he tossed the woman a quarter and scooped Felix up. All the way home in the back of the bike trailer, Marie lay in Felix's grip as he manipulated her stiff arms and legs fully in their sockets and turned her head all the way around backwards. When they got home, Ursula, the big sister, busied her way over and asked, What's her name? Marie, Felix said impatiently. He had heard the name Marie somewhere in a book lately. He was heading into the house to get things. Marie, Ursula repeated in agreement because she considered herself to have the final say on all doll matters. And her full name is Marie Evangeline Vinson, but mainly she is called Marie Vinson. Marie Vinson, thought Marie. I have been called Cruella de Vil. I came off the line with 1,000,000 Cruella de Vils before me and 1,000,000 after. Now I am pulled off a lawn by these children, and they say I am Marie Vinson because it is the first thing to pop into their foolish heads. They don't know anything about the line of millions. In the careless running of their mouths, I am reborn. I am Marie Vinson. In the children's rooms, Felix and Ursula threw themselves into activity. Ursula had to get all the other dolls out to introduce them properly to Marie. Felix had to get his zip tie and the 2x4 with the wheels on it. Arms laden, Felix headed back toward the door, but Ursula blocked his way. What are you doing with Marie Vinson? Ursula, let me through. Where are you taking Marie Vinson? She's going to be the first one to try out my skateboard. Marie gasped, a silent plastic gasp. The first one to try out a skateboard. The first person to do something dangerous is taking a risk. Let me through! She has to meet the other dolls. They have to be properly introduced if she's going to join the dollhouse. Fair point, Marie thought, remembering the vacant smiles of the tall blonde dolls. Felix looked over the other dolls in Ursula's arms as he considered this proposal, and Marie looked them over too. These dolls were a motley assemblage. None of them wore clothes unless they were plastic and impossible to remove like the ones she wore. Some had bits of yarn or tissue paper glued onto them. One was hot glued onto the back of a lion. They all had about the same haircut, right down to the skull. Most of them seemed to have experienced some tragedy or other. The loss of an eye, unmistakable marks of dog chewing, the odd coat of nail polish painted over the entire face. Ursula gestured importantly to the group of dolls. I have to introduce them. She will do a trick for them, Felix said. Marie's heart quickened. A trick? A dangerous trick? A trick? Yes, look at her head, see? She's very strong. She won't break no matter what. Ursula sucked her cheek and then nodded her assent. Yes, she's a daredevil. She lost the top of her head doing a jump on her motorcycle. They both made for the backyard. Daredevil. Marie was too filled with white-hot joy, the diamond in her chest glowing. Daredevil. She's a daredevil. In the backyard, Felix used zip ties to attach Marie to the skateboard, then began to climb his tree fort. Oh my, thought Marie as she peered over the edge. The distance from this treehouse to the ground is greater than the distance from the dollhouse to the floor, which I once jumped, by many, many orders of magnitude. And it is I who will jump it. I who after destruction and 9 years' desolation, here she goes! Wait, Ursula yelled as she struggled up the ladder with all the dolls. I have to line up the dolls to watch her. Felix revved the skateboard backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards. Marie Vinson, will now. Here she goes, Felix said. Wait, thought Marie. Wait, Ursula said. Felix rolled his eyes and puffed out his cheeks. First, she's gonna address the dolls, Ursula said. Thank you, Ursula. As I was saying, I'm Marie Vinson. I'm Marie Vinson. The world's greatest daredevil. The world's greatest daredevil. By some magic of understanding, Marie's voice seemed to flow right out of Ursula's mouth. We'll now attempt the greatest jump ever made by doll kind. Felix made a little hurry-up grunt, thus cementing my worldwide fame as the greatest daredevil of all time. But Felix had had enough speechifying. To the astonishment of all the dolls present, he wound up the homemade skateboard and Marie Vinson, strapped and unflinching, and they flew off the side of the tree house and out into the wide blue sky. Finally, I am recognized by one and all, Marie thought, the words lifted to the heavens by the exhilaration of flight. As the homemade skateboard sailed across the sky above the lawn, smashed into the side of the fence, then slid down to crash against the concrete sidewalk. For Marie, the bone-rattling crash was as delicious as the flight had been. I am a daredevil. I am the same as no doll. Felix and Ursula came running to inspect the wreckage of the crash. One of the wheels of the skateboard is knocked off, Felix yelled to his sister. But Marie was picking up Marie. I, Marie Vinson, am already as broken as it is possible for me to be, Ursula was saying, or Marie was saying through Ursula. What remains of me is invincible. I am a doll who will never die. From then on, Marie was pretty much the biggest celebrity in Ursula and Felix's dollhouse. Sure, she annoyed the dolls with her long speeches, which all began with I, Marie Vinson, the world's greatest daredevil, but whatever followed the speeches was amazing. By some mysterious power that came with just a swelling feeling in her chest, she could always make Felix or Ursula get the idea, and think it was their idea, to send her through the spin cycle of the washing machine, or for her to spend the night in the freezer. And at night, when dolls are free to move around, she threw herself into free fall off of every surface that it was possible for a doll to fly from. And then one night, Ursula and Felix had a babysitter. The babysitter was a college girl, stressed out from her midterm exams, and she really needed to make the babysitting money for tuition. She was having to pinch every penny at her college. The first thing you have to do is come and meet our dolls, Felix said. Our dolls are really great. And he dragged the babysitter to the dollhouse. Here is Lottie. She's the boss doll. And here's Georgette. This is Clea. She's a veterinarian. She takes care of all our stuffies. And this is the best doll. This is Marie Vinson. And as Felix thrust the best doll into the babysitter's hand, there was a shock of recognition for both of them. For the babysitter was none other than Stacy, who had so long ago got the unhappy meal, who had been the one to cut Marie's hair, the one to wrench off her head. Marie Vinson? Stacy said, No, this is my old Cruella de Vil doll. How did you get this? Cruella what? Said Ursula. I don't even think that's a name. No, it's not her name. This is Marie Vinson. She's a daredevil. Ursula was getting that funny feeling in her chest, the strange white-hot sensation that bubbled up inside her sometimes when she was playing with Marie, and she snatched Marie out of Stacy's hand. I, Marie Vinson, will now face the egg beater. What? Stacy said. Oh, that's a great idea, Felix giggled. Come on, babysitter, we'll make whipped cream and with Marie Vinson inside. And he grabbed Stacy with both hands and hustled her off to the kitchen, where he filled her hands with the egg beater and the big bowl. I, Marie Vinson, will now attempt a trick so daring, so ingenious that no one of doll kind has ever dreamed of it before. I will face drowning in a whole quart of the heaviest cream. Dad got whipped cream for waffles tomorrow morning, but we can just whip it now, Felix squealed. Are you sure about this? Stacy asked as Felix assembled the egg beater and stuffed it into her hands. Plug it in. I'm not allowed to work the outlet. Ursula placed Marie inside the bowl and poured the heavy cream over her, still speechifying. Now the cream goes over my head, but I, Marie Vinson, fear nothing. I escaped the line of millions. I survived the meal bag. I survived the scissors and the pliers. What are you talking about? Felix asked, but Ursula was filled with the white-hot life of Marie. I survived 7 years in the dark closet. Push the button! Felix screamed at Stacy, and she turned on the egg beater, and the egg beater whirred all around Marie, battering her limbs, and the cream filled her leg joints and her sleepy eyes, and she went round and round and round inside the cream, which was whipping higher and higher, and she burned with such hot ecstasy that she kept her connection to the white heat in Ursula's chest the whole time, so that when the cream was all whipped and Stacy turned off the egg beater, Ursula yelled, "And now for the grand finale! I, Marie Vinson, covered in whipped cream, will put my head in the babysitter's mouth." Stacy said, "You have to do it!" Felix grabbed Marie out of the bowl and held her, cream-covered, out to Stacy. And Stacy remembered suddenly wrenching Marie's head off with the pliers, remembered how sad she felt that day, and she looked into Felix and Ursula's eyes, staring at her, waiting, with the doll in front of her mouth. Stacy nodded and opened her mouth. "I, Marie Vinson, am putting my head into the most dangerous place on planet Earth, the mouth of the babysitter, but oh, she is gentle. She is eating the cream off my eyes. Well, that was actually nice, you know, almost as nice as being thrown off a 2-story building." Felix pulled Marie Vinson back out of Stacy's mouth. "Well, babysitter, did you enjoy your meal?" Stacy smiled. "Yes, it made me happy."